To this now, the Drinks Federation of South Africa has been launched to bring together for the first time the entire drinks industry. It will serve as a platform, we are told, for engagement with policymakers, regulators, media and community partners. To tell us more about it is the Federation's CEO, Angela Russell, who joins me now in studio. Angela, thank you for coming through. So I attended the launch, and this is partly what prompted this invitation for you to come through. The key question someone may ask is that there are many organizations that represent alcohol producers, retailers, etc. Why this particular organization at this point? Does it add to the basket and plethora of organizations we have, or will this be different?
So I think what has happened is, out of COVID-19, you saw that there wasn't necessarily one industry body that spoke on behalf of the entire drinks industry. What we have done is brought together the beer, wine, spirits, organizations of all shapes and sizes to come together. We are the one voice who is going to speak on behalf of the industry. That doesn't mean that the likes of the trade associations who represent beer, wine and spirits are going to go away. They still have a pivotal role to play in the industry, looking at industry-specific issues that face. But what we are going to be doing is we are looking at the broader issues. We are going to, I think very importantly, we have joined up with aware.org, who looks at responsible drinking programs so that we can actually start driving a culture of responsible drinking in South Africa, which I think is much needed.
And this is pitched at CEO level in terms of who serves in the leadership of this organization. I'm told that this is the first time you are collaborating in this way in an industry that's hugely competitive.
It is a very competitive industry, and it has taken a huge amount of effort to get the CEOs together. So the founding members of the Drinks Federation of South Africa are DGB, Distel, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, Heineken and South African breweries. So they are very competitive in the market, but they have absolutely seen the need to come together and look at the issues that we need to work on and speak with one voice for the industry.
So you're foregrounding this issue, and this is partly why I asked for you to be invited. You are foregrounding the issue of the liquor industry and the drinks industry being an integral part of South African society, right? There's the issue of the ills that are associated with, binge drinking, irresponsible and abuse of alcohol and addiction and other matters. But you are seeking to position yourselves firmly as people who will take the lead in addressing some of those, including underage drinking. How exactly do you plan to do that?
Absolutely. We do have issues in the country where not everyone's relationship with alcohol is responsible. So I think for us to drive a culture of responsible drinking, as I said, we're partnering with aware.org, which is a harm reduction. We're going to look at behavioral science to say how can we actually change the behaviors. But I think importantly is to do the research as to what are the underlying causes of people who have, do not have a good relationship with alcohol. So I think there's a lot of work that's being done. The companies on their own already have programs in place. We have programs in place under aware.org that look at things like underage drinking, binge drinking, fetal alcohol syndrome, looking at gender-based violence and drink driving. So there are programs already in place, but by coming together, all of these organizations or companies coming together, we definitely are hoping to scale them up so that we have a bigger impact on changing this drinking culture.
What will you say to a skeptic who says this is the industry being reactive to the Liquor Amendment Bill and some of the more stringent proposals that are contained therein, the raising of the age limit for consuming alcohol from 18 to 21, all these issues around advertising and restricting that. We've seen what has happened with the tobacco industry since that bill was passed all those years ago, in that you no longer see advertising for tobacco. So someone might say, well, this is you just trying to pull wool over our eyes and basically to spin government and the legislators into saying we are a responsible industry, but at this point the horse has bolted.
I think there is definitely a need for regulation over the industry, and we're not saying that shouldn't happen. I think what, for me, is if you're looking at the position of where we are. It's an all-of-society approach that's needed. It's regulation, it's enforcement of that regulation, it's looking at community partners to, work together to work towards responsible drinking consumption. So I don't think it's necessarily against policy. What we do want to do is make sure that we have sound policy that's going to allow the sustainability of the industry going forward, in contributing over 175 billion collectively across the value chain to the economics of this country. We want sustainable policies, but what we don't want is policies that are put in place that, for example, have indirect consequences of allowing these nefarious gangs that are pushing illicit products into the market, and therefore, having
Speaking of that, how big of a problem is that? Because I know we talk about illicit cigarettes. We've spoken at length about that, but I don't think we've had the conversation about illicit alcohol products, particularly in the context of the alcohol bans that we had during COVID-19, the lockdown period of it.
So I think what you have seen as a result of the prohibition of alcohol during COVID-19 is the raising up of illicit trade. And the stats that I have heard is up to about 23% of alcohol being consumed is illicit products. That's obviously going to have an impact on the taxes that are going to the country, but more importantly, that is product that is not necessarily being produced in a safe environment, that has all the necessarily safety requirements for, on the manufacturing process, and therefore you are not sure what is actually out there for consumers to consume. And I think it is a real problem that we need to get under control.
Yeah. And lastly, Angela, let me ask you about one of these incidents that really thrust the liquor trade, at least aspect, liquor trade aspect of the industry in a really bad light and difficult light. The Enyobeni Tavern situation where, these young people died. And to this point, we still don't know what happened. There's much speculation about whether the product they were consuming was illicit. There are all these things around underage drinking, etc., etc. How do we hold you to account as a sector in the light of things like those in future going forward? You now have the Drinks Federation. You are working together as an industry. How do we hold you to account then to ensure that there's no repeat of incidences such as what we saw at Enyobeni?
I mean, Enyobeni was a tragedy, and as a parent myself, I cannot even imagine what those families, went through. What has come out of that is that you are seeing the industry having programs in place to work with the taverners to look at how do we address them allowing underage people into their facilities, looking at, encouraging them not to sell to underage consumers. So the industry's already put a lot in place. And I think what we are also looking at doing is we have an advertising code of conduct, but we are actually going to extend that into a trading code of conduct as well, so we can have responsible training. And that is going to take, enforcers, companies to actually start training the taverners on what is best practice out there, so that we actually don't have a repeat of that. And I pray to God that we never see something like that again.
Yeah. By the way, do you have a consolidated view on this liquor amendment bill? Are you for it, against it?
So I think at this point in time, we haven't really formed any policies.
Sure.
But I think the policy discussions need to have evidence-based. So I think research does need to be done to say what is the position what is the position of over 21 drinking, what kind of impact has it had around the world, but also specific to South Africa. But I think policies is only one part of it. We need to come together, we need to have enforcement, we need to have community members assisting people to ensure that we're having those responsible consumption discussions.
Angela, I've got to thank you for your time and coming through to studio and having the conversation with me. That is Angela Russell, who is CEO of the newly launched Drinks Federation of South Africa.